Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Dan Winter, fractalfield.com, fractalu.com. And as you know, we have a fun little conversation tonight about the science behind Therify.net, living plasma, and all kinds of cool stuff. Also, we're going to have an announcement with Jenny here about the Lucid Dreaming group, which is cooking. It just happens that at the moment, Terry Burns has joined us. We're happy about her there, twinkling. and Teresa is up scheduled. What is it? April 23? Did you say Tufan was? Yes. So Terry Burns is going to be doing a presentation about John Dee and the hypercube and all kinds of cool stuff. And as a little taste or preview to that conversation, Terry and I were talking about her studies, and she's the academic here. I'm just a dilettante on this one, but
yeah, you are never a dilettante. Come
on. but so here is John Dee's life's work called Hieroglyphic Monad, and it's basically you take all the symbols for everything fun, hypercube, and all the glyph symbols, for example, for all of the planets of astrology. You take all those symbols and you push them into one symbol, isn't that right, Terry, kind of thing? And then you get, and at first, I sort of looked at that and I thought, well, that doesn't really look like physics to me. But then I had an insight the other day. Here is John Dee. He's studying literally how light twinkles and scintillates at the turning inside out point. And he literally uses that twinkle, which is literally a convergence point, as a foci to create communication with spirits, ancestors, et cetera, et cetera. And now we know a lot more about the physics of what that probably is, that if you get the light to converge at the right simultaneous sequence of incident angle, you then literally you impedance match with the longitudinal array. That's the new information. So his study of the hieroglyphic monad was, in fact, a study of the vector directions by which light or charge needed to converge in order to create that magical coupling at the center point, what I call the longitudinal array. So now finish with that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great way to put it, Dan. Thank you. I mean, and there's particularly, as we've talked about, you get these kissing cones, which nobody noticed. I mean, I mean, it's a whole presentation. I'll talk about it later. But one of the real interesting things is that you get one of the kissing cone formations is a hyperbola. Well, a hyperbola is also what you get with a torus, which is a third-dimensional projection of a hypercube. And so what you and I were talking about was that Dee in this work, which is essentially a work of sacred geometry, also thinks he's solving two of the big problems of ancient Greek geometry, the squaring of the circle and the doubling of the cube. Modern mathematicians would say, no, he's not. And Dee would probably say, well, those who don't understand should be quiet and learn, or which is what he has the Latin on the frontispiece of the monad. But what you find is that the ancient Greeks, like Dee, assumed ether. They didn't talk exactly about 4 dimensions. They just talked about this spiritual dimension that binds all things. In the scientific revolution, we cut that off and just had 3 dimensions, but then we come up with 4, 5, and so on. Well, if you allow Dee to have 4 dimensions, even though he doesn't have a language for it, then his doubling of the cube and squaring of the circle work, because he's essentially talking about a hypercube and a hypersphere, which are things he doesn't have language for. And he's using kind of a Christian woo-woo language to do it. But anyhow, that's what you and I were talking about before you started recording. So thanks for letting me a little pitch.
Well, no, that's so in her presentation, Teresa is going to go into this greater. Remember, we think the symmetry of the Ophanim-Enochian plasma shadow letters, which we think became the movie Starcade, was, quote, the same hypercube. We think the symmetry of the ancient, the Shakespearean theater, where you get consumed perspective, e pluribus unum, everybody's emotions confuse, was also hypercube. And we think the hypercube is really a sequence of symmetries to implode plasma. And at the implosion point, you get this perfect communion, and which is the impedance coupling into the node of the longitudinal array. And by the way, this is good background, because it's precisely a description of what needs to happen between the two plasma tubes of the Therify. That if you get enough waves converging at the right angle and you compress that node in the middle, it'll start imploding. And that creates a connection point in a longitudinal array, which is where the magic happens. The same thing that happens when the kids go into trance and bliss blindfolded. And not only at that moment are they seeing without their eyes, but frequently they're seeing ancestors. Speaking of shades of John Dee.
Yeah.
And so this is the relevance here. And so I actually, when people said, Vincent said, well, you have memories of John Dee and you were John Dee. And then I sort of looked at John Dee as his masterpiece about this symbol. I thought, well, that doesn't really sound like physics to me. But then I had a whole new respect for John Dee when I understood that he was studying how light scintillates and how the pinhole point in a pinhole camera, where literally the light turns inside out, and at that point is the magic communication, which is the coupling.
Dee, by the way, and Dee did have a pinhole camera, by the way. That gentleman at the John Dee Lighthouse in Rhode Island has shown that.
Yes, and that's Alan something. Yes, so he made a film. So John Dee supposedly designed the Newport Tower, which has a pinhole camera basically built in, and that when the light converges and turns inside out and makes the inverse image on the opposite side, is a beautiful physics introduction to if it came to focus there and did turn inside out with resolution, guess what was happening at the focal point? Coupling to a longitudinal array, telephone line to ancestors, implosion the brain. So, this is relevant to tonight's conversation because that's exactly what we're trying to set up with Therify. But I think we should say one more thing here, Teresa, and that is, how does the word next dimension fit into this story, or hypercube? Actually, what I think that means is that at the convergence point, the next set of superposed harmonic rotations is enabled. In other words, okay, the phase conjugation in optics starts with a cube. It's very simple. It's called four-wave mixing. However, where the pine cones kiss in a cube accurately, at the convergence points, you get the possibility of another sequence of superposed harmonics based on golden ratio, which at that time, the only language they had for that was next dimension. Next dimension only meant, now we can superpose another set of rotations of charge on a similar set of nodes, precisely the way you would superpose 5 cubes to make a dodecahedron out of 1 cube.
This is why I love to talk to you, Dan. That is brilliant. That's but that center point, all I would say about it is it's quantum non-locality. You can communicate with whomever you want. Now, you just explained why, so thank you.
Well, and see, I think the physics is fitting together pretty nicely here, because what physics calls action at a distance, they say you take entanglement and then you hook it up with an Einstein-Rosen bridge, and they call that non-locality. Well, actually, entanglement perfected defines what phase conjugation perfects, and that convergence of conjugate waveforms imploding at the central node enables that connection. So we think we know exactly what it is in that longitudinal compression. Some people call it scalar compressional node, which is that the more harmonics that have converged, completing the compressional array around that center node, the more multiples of the speed of light are connected down that pipe. Practical example. The best Stargate in this galaxy, and the whole galaxy has had a war about it for about 1 million years, is called the Trapezium Cube in the heart of Orion. Well, why is that the best Stargate that's been worth fighting about for 1 million years? Hello. Because that's the biggest pine cone around. It's quite simple. And so with that particular Stargate, anywho.
Do you think we should make a cautionary note, Dan, about hi Terry, about that such a point has also been subject to infiltration, looshing, Borg, artificial AI incursion. Could you talk a bit about that as well?
Jenny is making a very good point here, folks. It not only has there been a war over that Stargate for the last million years, but for the last X number of 100,000 years, the best Stargate in this galaxy has been controlled by the bad guys, definitely, which is called the Nebu. And this is Elena Danan's big story. And supposedly recently they got kicked out, which is fabulous. But yeah, in other words, these portals, most wars are really about access to the airport. And in this case, this was the biggest airport around. And therefore, unfortunately, for a long time, this galaxy was owned by the Greys and the Dracos, called the Nebu. And yeah, and it was a hive mind collective. And so what Jenny is pointing to here is there are serious astral hygiene issues about these portals. And that brings up something that Teresa may wish to chat about in her presentation in April as well, which is, there are those who have criticized John Dee's skill at astral hygiene, really. Like Michael Sarian said that John Dee didn't know how to keep the bad guys out when he opened these portals. And Teresa has another view. Go ahead. You want to say something, Teresa?
Well, I'll have to clean it up compared to what I said to you in private about it. I don't think he doesn't understand enough about what John Dee and Edward Kelly did to set things up to know what he's talking about. And he wouldn't have, because, I'm not trying to toot my own horn too much, but the translation I had of the monad wasn't out then. And there were things that were only in Latin that people didn't understand. And you also have to understand the kind of puns that Dee makes. And then, as I was saying before we started here, if you take the sacred geometry and these kind of stacked devices and kissing cones and the hieroglyphic monad as the conditions that allowed the Enochian to come through, you don't have an astral hygiene problem. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think I said it in a more colorful way, but
right. So
very nice person, but he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's true. And I think Michael Sarian's criticism is not well academically based. I agree with Teresa on this, but it does bring up a useful conversation, which is that when you set up a plasma implosion node, there does have to be some kind of discrimination at the door, at the gate. It's called secret places of the lion. There's many names for this, where the lion serves you by smelling for fear before you enter the Stargate. And that's a whole nother story and metaphor. But then applying that to this evening's conversation about Therify.net and living plasma, of course, we have many reports, or at least quite a few, about the Therify plasma node being helpful to release ghosts, for example. This was from Perpignan and other reports. And that also Therify, in our special guest for this evening, Mauricio. Mauricio, are you here?
Hello, I'm here.
I'm glad, and he's smiling. So Mauricio is one of our special guests for this evening. And Mauricio is, in my view, one of our more advanced Therify operators in his Therify center in Asuncion, Paraguay. Is that right?
Yeah, in the center of South America.
Yes. And Mauricio's website is Dr. ASHTA, Dr. DRASHTA.info. And Mauricio, my idea is that we're going to prepare a major new Therify blog. It will be the newest blog at Therify.net about what Mauricio is going to present this evening. And also Mauricio has prepared a document with some very interesting experiences and feedback and skills that he's learned in working with Therify, including using biofeedback with Therify, including using breath coherence with Therify, and including using Therify as a group meditation tool, actually. And and we're going to share a little bit of that document with you in a few minutes here. Am I right, Mauricio?
Yes, exactly. Happy to share, and I'm very excited.
Yes, it's really cool. And the reason, now the excuse I had for bringing Mauricio up just now was that we were talking about, well, gee, you can use the plasma tool as a kind of communication device, because you create a kind of a node, which is a, like ancestor memories and stargates and portals. And I've always joked that if you had a little more amperage in the broad spectra there, Therify is a stargate. Hello. It's the same infrasound we got when Jean-Charles Moyen bilocated. We got the same infrasound as his brainwaves in the Therify. So the point being, even Mauricio, I don't know if you'd have a comment. So when Mauricio found that Therify was very useful in bringing together a group for a group meditation, is that what you said, Mauricio?
Yeah. Since the start, I experimented a lot with group meditations with the Theraphi, and the synergy it creates. It's amazing. It's amazing how deep you can get, and I truly didn't get the same feeling like doing it alone. Right, the group bliss is always better, I think. So it was very catalyzing, even having visionary states, and some even had cathartic states, so
Yes. And see, we had that experience with Carlos, who ran Therify in Barcelona for his family constellation, and found that trance hypnotic induction was far faster and deeper with Therify, that deep induction. But that also then leads us, I think, just for a moment, Jenny was going to do a little announcement here, and Jenny is helping convene our Lucid Dream team. And the Lucid Dream team is steering a plasma bubble together. I mean, that is relevant, isn't it? Whatever you use for the tool for bliss, when people get that infrasound of implosion where many e pluribus can become one, that collective plasma cocoon can theoretically become navigable as a group, which, by the way, is a skill that I don't think I'm too good at. But Jenny, on the other hand, Jenny, did you want to make a short announcement then?
Well, that's fascinating, Mauricio. So are you saying that you were synchronizing with the Therify, because it is a plasmoid, isn't it? It's a plasma being. Were you synchronizing with that in the group?
Yeah. What we did was, I did this many times now. It is putting the lamps in the center of the circle, and putting maybe some crystals in the center, making an altar in the Therapy, and created that intention there in the center.
Yeah.
And it works amazing. I mean, as I've said, the synergy, it's very, very powerful.
This is Mauricio's center, and here is Mauricio's picture. Is that right, Mauricio? There's the group.
Yeah, those are the pictures I made.
So that's literally a tool for group entrainment to steer that plasma. But a lot of people do not have the inner fine tuning to then navigate or steer that collective cocoon. Enter Jenny.
Well, that's one of the things that we were pondering. So it's been an amazing week. We've had nearly 40 responses for incredible people. Thank you so much.
This is luciddreamteam.com.
Yes.
And the last week's presentation. Go ahead, Jenny.
Those who stepped forward, and so we created a lobby, if you like, the first node point, and set a practical exercise, which was, start to share yourself, and talk a little about your background, your skills, what your hopes, and what you'd like to participate as. And then from that, we've created those who are able to open up, as in start to become shareable. turning inside out have moved into the next room. Let's call it the kitchen, whichever, the lounge in this group, and we've had an incredible response from everybody. So thank you, anybody that's here and has responded. Apart from gratitude, it's a whole learning experience. Has Dan gone?
And so those who would like to become involved, you go to the link at luciddreamteam.com, and that's a Telegram group. That Telegram group is kind of the lobby where people gather and decide who is focused and introduce each other. And then they form more intensive pods of people who actually want to specifically lucid dream together. And that is a more intimate kind of thing. And so that you pass into the inner sanctum sort of after introductions, et cetera. Is that a good way to put it, Jenny?
Well, I wouldn't use the religious terminology, but certainly pass through into the next node point. Because a part of the, I didn't know how this was going to work out. We're just following our intention. And that is that in people's, the energies that are coming through and what they're putting in has been palpable. So it's been a week of integrating those energies in this first round. And, we've still got 25 in the lobby. Please continue, because it's fascinating the way that we are naturally filtering out, if you like. And that has a lot to do with intention.
And the subtlety here is to actually feel the group together, to feel a group together inside a lucid dream or a bliss meditation, to feel the other members of the group and to navigate collectively. This is a subtlety. This is non-trivial, but it is what's meant by the song, Mother Nature's silver seed threw a new home in the sun. Mother Nature's silver seed is a plasma cocoon. And who's steering? we always say, beehives don't swarm unless there's royal blood, meaning someone whose grail DNA is implosive enough to steer, and that's advanced work. And also we're suggesting specifically that lucid dreaming teams functionally could eventually form a kind of immune system for our planet shamanically. In other words, first you got, little plasma ghosts in your neighborhood are a bit parasitic, and then you have interstellar plasma parasites that are a lot parasitic. And where's the immune system? Hello. if you got a big enough plasma cocoon. Anywho, so that what we're going to do now, we're going to check for some further announcements, and then we're going to do a brief intro to the Therify, to the science behind Therify, and then we're going to invite Mauricio to tell more stories about his work with advanced applications with Therify. But before that, were there any announcements, Tufan or Russ? Or
we can remind next week's class, we will be talking with Patrick Bott on February 26th. About the audio binaural beats for bliss brain states, about binaural beat while using craniosacral beat frequencies, Flaming Sound and flamingmind.com. And the following week, we will be talking with me about entangled dimensions and the simulation argument and the brief history of holographic sciences, advancement of virtual realities, and fractal systems.
Yeah, so we could have some fun. And that infrasound of what we think is the world's most powerful bliss binaural beat, Flaming Sound at flamingmind.com, is directly what drives Therify, what we're about to discuss, actually. So Patrick is the programmer for all that work with the biofeedback devices. So that's next week. Patrick has been super busy because of all the requests. And so we had to delay. This is his first presentation of this series because he's been so busy, but he's having fun. And Russell, did you have any? So Russell's working on some more options for the Discord group. Is that right, Russell?
Yes. Greetings, tribe. Wonderful to have everybody here. So for the Discord, yes, we're still integrating the bot, and there will be more options. Maybe we were thinking to add, like for Lucid Dream Team, I wanted to know if anybody would like a segment, maybe sometime in the week to get together for like a story time, or if anybody has experiences that they would like to share and discuss. So if anybody's interested in that, maybe say something in the chat, or maybe we'll take a poll in the Discord, and we'll build from there, because I know a lot of people have experiences that sometimes they can't get out, and maybe I can hold that with Jen, and sometimes Dan will come in. So just thought, and that's it for now.
Yeah, so maybe Jen might chat with Russ sometime if you want some option in the Discord discussion groups for it. Remember, there's a discussion also in the Telegram lucid dreaming group, which the link is there. But since there's so much activity in the Discord group, Jenny, it might be nice to have an option in the Discord group, which maybe you could just help moderate a little bit. So that's a fun conversation.
Yes, thank you, Russell. Yeah,
that's kind, and Russell been so dedicated. And just a little chat in the chat window here. Where can I find out if there's a Therify near my home? It's the list of well, remember, the public list of Therify centers is not the complete list, but it is the list of those who chose to be public, and that's at therify.net/centers. Yeah, that's right, and the link is there, so that option is present. So yes, so now I'm going to just do a short review of the science behind Therify, and then we're going to ask Mauricio to talk a little bit about his advanced uses of Therify, including biofeedback and group work, and some of his reports, which are so beautiful, I think. So first, I'm going to go to, well, let's see here, Skype Acrobat Finder. Bear with me just one moment here. Share screen. So we'll do in the keynote first. So this is, remember, the opportunity to create what is a longitudinal wave here. Are you seeing my screen? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the longitudinal is the compressional part of the electromagnetic propagation, which is separate from the transverse, which is kind of the up and down part. So a transverse wave here, the movement is perpendicular to the direction of wave propagation, where longitudinal is parallel with or aligned with the direction of propagation. And it's very important to think about what that means, because if you want to generate centripetal force, this kind of wave, if they're arriving from opposing directions like this, then simultaneous opposite arrivals of this kind of wave, 180 degrees out of phase, means squeeze, 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 and that could get centripetal, and therefore that could get negentropic, I mean self-organizing. Whereas if this kind of wave is arriving around a compression node, this is not going to get centripetal or implosive. But remember, almost all of physics only deals with the transverse component of the electromagnetic wave, and most all electrical engineers don't know how to measure or produce even a longitudinal wave, sometimes incorrectly called scalar. And yet, if you can't produce the compressional component, you're never going to get implosive squeezing, which, by the way, was the name for the first nuclear device. It was a longitudinal component of the phonon. So imploding, what's called scalar torsional, that is a critical part. And when those waves meet from opposing direction pairs, and remember, we think Antoine Priori actually, although remember, that's the antecedent of the Therify device, actually did not know what phase conjugation was, as evident, even though he tripped over an approximation of the right frequency signature, thanks to the people who preceded him, which would be Lakhovsky and Tesla, that they got a frequency signature that approximated implosion and approximated generating phase conjugation. But the proof that Antoine Priori did not really know how phase conjugation worked is the fact that he never used two tubes. He always used only one. And sadly, you can't conjugate efficiently unless you get opposing 180 degrees out of phase matched pair signal sources. Anybody who's ever done phase conjugation in optics knows you need a pair of lasers. Well, Priory didn't know that. So although Priory was a genius, and we're going to look at his frequencies in a moment. In fact, let's look at his frequencies now. I think I have that slide right here. So this is what we think it needs to look like. This is the pine cones kissing noses, and this is old news, but just this is a review. So in the center red circle, that is Planck. And you got a pine cone, a broad spectral pine cone of the phase conjugate noble gas optics, and then the low RF megahertz 500,000 volt pump wave. And then you got about 12 to 15 frequencies here of infrasound modulated on the RF. So that is a big pine cone. It goes all the way from infrasound to RF to optical conjugating noble gases, conjugating radio frequencies, and conjugating low frequency magnetics and low frequency infrasound modulated plasma. So you got a really big pine cone coming from two opposite directions, precisely 180 degrees out of phase in a wave shape that looks like exactly this. Now, and if you do that implosively, then at the center, you get a big implosive drain hole. I mean, a place where the charge can collapse non-destructively through Planck. And that means that you can spit out a kind of a big longitudinal wave, basically, as you say, a portal. Now, here is how we knew we were on the right track when my friend at that time, Tom Bearden, had published the frequencies Antoine Priory used: 3 hertz, 10 hertz, 32 hertz, 80 hertz. So this was a cascade of low frequency infrasound frequencies that Priory famously used, which he tripped over, he got from Lakhovsky and Tesla, and which approximated but did not accurately create phase conjugation. So when we saw these frequencies that Priory used and saw how close that was to my equation for perfected phase conjugation, take Planck, multiply by golden ratio, and then you're done. You keep recursively multiplying by golden ratio, integer exponents, and which produces this series here, 2.78, 11, 30. You see, so that cascade, so that was the moment we decided to build Therify, when we saw that data from what Antoine Priory was doing. Because remember, Antoine Priory was spending millions of dollars, but no physicist could explain how it worked. Although Tom Bearden got very close, he kept talking about a time-reversed wave, which, let's just think about that for a moment. I think that is actually not a very helpful expression. That when physics says it was time-reversed, what they mean is the wave bumped into a mirror and came back in a wave that was exactly 180 degrees out of phase. It's called time-reversed because the wave goes back to where it started, which the good news is when a laser bounces off a phase conjugate mirror and is then time reversed, and then it returns backward in time, what they mean is that wave returns to the geometry of where it came from, which is literally the past. So the wave goes back to the past. They call that time reverse, and they call that time reversal, which I think is a confusing term, because what they really mean is simply the wave returns to the shape it was originally. But interestingly, physics is clear that you can't go backwards in time with the wave shape to decreased order. You can't do it. You can only go back to increased order. That's a clue, very important clue. The name for that, by the way, is negentropy. And what it essentially means is, literally in physics, it is supposedly proven that you can time reverse rusted steel back to clean steel, but you cannot do the reverse, as we've said many times. So what they mean by time reversal actually is only and specifically negentropy. So people kind of cross their eyes when you say time reversal, what do they really mean? I don't think those people clearly understood what time is. Time is only a name for rate of spin. Nothing else, absolutely nothing else is meant by the word time except relative rate of rotation. So for example, the reason your wristwatch speeds up when you accelerate to light speed is because some of the charge inertia as you accelerate is translated in vorticity down that vortex. And so literally the speed of the atoms in spin rotation accelerates, and that's called time speeding up, but it's actually only a name for spin rate. Hello. So all this, mysterious crap of the space-time continuum, no, it's all a name for an array of rotations. The one rotation which creates mass, spin stores inertia, which is named mass, and spin has a spin rate, which is named time. So now space-time is no longer a mystery. Hello. Well, that was our short intro. But interestingly here, changing subjects a little bit. So this is some of the information, how Priory dramatically proved he could accelerate seed germination, seed growth, plant growth. And we have all these pictures for Therify.net creating plant growth. And when Tom Bearden, who was my original teacher about Antoine Priory, knew him very well, when he wrote his book about longitudinal waves, which he proved a longitudinal wave is what a gravity wave is made of by equation, and he called that gravitobiology, as in you make biology grow by focusing longitudinal waves, and you can see why, because a plant, a seed, is going to germinate to the extent that it can suck. So if that seed is able to suck in its first nutrient, that's called germination. And if it doesn't suck, then it really sucks because it ain't going to grow. and what makes the plant seed suck is charge implosion, literally. That's why Therify is so famous for, making the flowers grow. In fact, in Nashville, he said that the flower store across the street, their flowers started lasting twice as long. And so the ability to make the electric field centripetal is the essence of fertility, actually. And fertility is that implosion. That's why we think ancient stone circles, or in many of their stone structures, one of their primary purposes was to accelerate agriculture, to the extent that, just to think more deeply about this, we explained in the Facebook conversation today, it is well proven that if you don't avoid the moon, your seeds don't grow. This is not subjective. This is not a myth. This is physics. You need to avoid the moon if you'd like your seeds to germinate. This is physics. It is well known. What is the principle? The principle is that the moon is hollow, metal, and artificial. And if the moon is between the sun and the earth, the longitudinal wave of the sun is partially blocked. Remember, you put a copper plate on the roof, a wire down to a copper plate in the basement, and the basement is pitch black, and the plants grow wonderfully because the longitudinal wave got there. But if somebody blocked that longitudinal wave like the damn moon, so now you understand the role of longitudinal wave to growth and fertility, because they help the biology of the seed implode, enabling fertility and seed growth, for example. So that's the idea. So let's see, what other slides? So that here's the picture of the current version of Therify. And this is our conversation about Therify triggering lucid dreaming. This is our biological evidence that the frequency series physics have now proven, Ursula Voss, triggers lucid dreaming. These are the frequencies, actually, 25 and 40 hertz, which are some of the frequencies. Look, in this chart of the frequencies which in the laboratory repeatedly triggered lucid dreaming, that's relatively close to my equation, the frequencies driving Therify. In other words, lucid dreaming is triggered by implosive compression. They didn't understand that, but we do. So the sequence of frequencies that help the aura implode is a lucid dreaming trigger, because when your aura gets centripetal, it gets compressed and dense enough at center to emanate, coherently radiate into the longitudinal array, which is called, as is Jenny and my favorite terms, going from the little array to the bigger array. So that bigger array outside your body, you went from your synaptic array to a bigger array, the longitudinal array, which is called the collective unconscious, the communion of saints, the dreaming track, songlines, ancestor radio. This is a name for the longitudinal array, and you don't get coherent in that array unless your aura is compressed enough to radiate coherently. And that's called a lucid dream and successful death. So that's kind of some of the background of this conversation. Now, I had another little slideshow prepared, but let's just stop this for a second. And let's check for any questions or comments at this point.
Can I ask a question then?
Sure.
So this broad harmonization of the frequencies in Therify, which is golden ratio exponents of Planck length and time, how would this broad harmonization affect the phonon coherency of the heart's pump wave, and what would its implications be in the biological metabolism?
Right. Well, the heart's pump wave is the right question, and the phase relationship to the brain's pump wave. First, we know that the brain harmonics that make bliss are precisely phase conjugate infrasound, which are precisely, almost precisely, the harmonics of Schumann, which has that same alpha to gamma series. Schumann harmonics and the brainwave harmonics of bliss are the same, and they're exactly golden ratio to Planck. So that infrasound is absolutely logical as how we then derive Therify. Now, the heart's relationship to that brainwave cascade, the heart coherence, is rich. First of all, what we do know is that the spine liquid pump harmonics are, and that's in the slideshow, and you've all seen that picture, the Upledger Institute showing of the tidal frequency that the spine liquid pump are exactly fitting the equation, especially the 0.1 hertz Mayer wave of the breath, which is the most important musical fundamental of the blood pressure. It's called the Mayer wave, 0.1 hertz. The 10-second breath, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, which is the only thing that heart math calls coherence. But that infrasound of the spine liquid pump, which is the driver of Kundalini and bliss, and it is impossible to be depressed if your spine liquid's pumping, that is the infrasound matrix driven by the heart harmonics. So although the heart harmonics directly are an octave cascade and never a golden cascade, that sets the matrix for the golden cascade in exactly the same way that the brainwave harmonic series from alpha, 8 hertz, to gamma, 44, the brainwave harmonic series from alpha to gamma, well known to trigger lucid dreaming and kids seeing without their eyes, and Jean-Charles Moyen's bilocation. That brainwave harmonic series was an octave cascade superposed over a golden ratio cascade, which is literally the star mother kit in the brain. Actually, it's the tensors of a waveform, which has the tetracube and the dodeca. And the cube of the dodeca is the whole metaphor here. It's the 7 spins and the 5 spins. So that fits perfectly. So that's an introduction to how the heart harmonics drive the spine liquid pump, and that infrasound drives the physics of Kundalini in phase with the brainwave cascade. So all of which, I mean, does that answer your question, Tufan? What do you think?
Definitely, sure. Yeah, and also another question from Dan Mack. I have a heart stent. Will the stent disqualify me from Therify experience?
In the FAQ and the instructions with Therify, we have been clear that we strongly recommend that no one with electronic implants should use it, because getting 500,000 volts to implanted electronics is, if you got a pacemaker, don't try it. Although doctors have done it, by the way, but we recommend don't try this at home. So if you got electronics inside, we suggest no for Therify. However, for some metal inside your, for example, some stents have some metal. Stent sometimes is non-metallic, and then there's absolutely no problem. And if there's some metal in it, actually, when we started, we said, if people have metal implants, but not electronics, that they should try Therify, but they should start gently, shorter sessions to be sure there's no heating or discomfort. And then we had specific anecdotal, detailed experiences, including in Belgium, where this guy had titanium in his heel and was in great pain and couldn't walk. And we were able to help him in 1 or 2 sessions. It was amazing. The effect was beautiful. So we know people with titanium implants, for example, have frequently been helped. But we still say, be careful when you start, check for heating or discomfort. But we've never had that issue. So our vision, remember, we cannot make medical suggestions or claims, and everything here is anecdotal. We're clear in that report. But the anecdotal reports strongly suggest that some small metal implants in the body do not pose a problem, actually. So you could use it.
Okay, another one might be related with our earlier phone-on discussion. Or is it that there is really no separation of consciousness, biology, and physics, which would make the process of Therify, for example, is one of reordering the process on a collective fundamental level?
Yeah, well, you know, that's been my life work to say that there's no difference between physics and consciousness and spirituality. Absolutely. We're saying that it's a unified language, that if you understood plasma, well, you could understand every spiritual story as well. So yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. And thinking of mind, body, and spirit as made of different stuff is very schizophrenic and not recommended. Just like thinking gravity and electromagnetism are separate is very schizophrenic and not recommended. So that's what the unified field is. Exactly. By the way, I wanted to say welcome to Dr. Shelley here. I saw you were there last time. In fact, Shelley runs our Therify Center in Calgary and theshareablewave.com. And Shelley, we were inviting some of our Therify more experienced people to maybe share a little tonight if you're in the mood, and you certainly would be that person. We're grateful that you're here. So welcome, Shelley.
Thank you so much. And I'm so lucky. Usually I'm working out at a retreat on Sunday. So I was so excited. I got in, only half an hour. Okay, so where I jumped in, we were talking about metal implants. And maybe it's already been mentioned, but, you know, hip replacements, that sort of thing, I've had no problem with. What very, very much caution needs to be given is to women wearing underwire bra. And it's not even the amount of metal. There are other factors too, because sometimes I find that if they haven't discharged the static, or they accumulate static quickly,
yes,
under not obvious circumstances.
So good point. So you really want to check when people come in the Therify. You know, we always tell them, well, you know, are you wearing any metal? But many times they don't even think about, oh, my bra is a bunch of metal wires. Ooh, bad news. Very, very important.
Yes. Yeah, and then it's also it often precedes the trigger to releasing what we might think of, I call them hitchhikers, but this is often associated with the release of maybe entities or thought forms. So that I mean, it's not just one simple equation, metal equals, you know, a reaction. There's just so much more, but of course, having the water in the session with you is always useful for that, for discharging.
I see. So Shelley is making some very good points here that, you know, people who've been wearing metal, this may be related to the fact that they've attracted some kind of plasma parasites as well. And also that water is one of the tools used to help have a place for the, you know, parasitics to go kind of discharge into. Very good point.
And then also one last thing that I would add is using the sacred geometry. So regardless if that's just visualizing a particular shape, or you projected maybe a shape onto the wall to help them visualize, but actually, Dan, I wanted to talk to you on another call, perhaps, about how this sacred geometry overlaying is one of the modalities for creating stasis. So how it can not trap it, maybe hold it usefully, but it's sustaining a frequency just simply by using the sacred geometry and the specific shapes. And you was just talking about the dodeca, for example, but
And
then that takes us into the Waj and the Dorje. What's the other
double
word?
Dorje. Yeah, visualizations that would help you,
Yes.
as you say, stabilize, create a still point and create a focal point. So these various synergies with the Therify, for example, geometric visualizations or geometric models and using water there. I think that's leading up to our fun conversation with Mauricio too, of the various ways he's using synergy with Therify, including his work with biofeedback and the breath with Therify. Shelley, did you have anything more, or should we go to Mauricio here?
Yeah, no, go ahead. But then also, of course, you probably already talked about the psychotronics element of it, but I'll just.
You mean the sort of.
Well, as far as using perhaps hair.
Oh, yes.
For long distance, for non-local sessions.
A witness, as they call it, a radionic witness or a psychotronic witness. Yes. Right. And in fact, in the session, I don't know if you were here, Shelley, in the session we did, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about remote healing with Michael Welk in Germany, using also Quantify for remote healing. They were very clear that, for example, it was a relatively high resolution color photograph that had to be recent, actually, but then also some hair or fingernails. And you put that at the center between the tubes when you're doing remote healing. And she had very dramatic successes with remote healing. I recommend that film, which has almost 4,000 views now, on remote healing with plasma. Yes, that psychotronic witness, which relates to psychotronic witness literature. But now we understand more of the physics of how that longitudinal node at the center creates that wormhole connection. So, for example, it's also better if sender and receiver are, of course, at the same time, but also if they're both on a magnetic line. It's also helpful if it's at sunrise or sunset. And this is all about longitudinal interferometry.
And also because not everybody can be out there at sunrise and sunset and have that beautiful addition to their therapy. But if we all have that within us to hold that. And so this is where to focus. This is how to teach your clients to place their attention and intention. And then your sessions will be magical.
That's where you hold that still point. Thank you, Shelley. Shelley's a saint here. She's been with us and she had fun with us in France. This is a great intro to Mauricio. What do you think, Mauricio? So Mauricio is going to tell us about various things he's done in conjunction with his Therify work, if you would like. And Mauricio, I don't know if you want to do a share screen or you want me to share what you sent, whatever you like.
Hello. Yeah, I can share some photos too. But before that, before I forget, the metal implant thing, I also had a lot of clients with hips, spines, replacements, and even skull. Like I had one patient who had a whole side of the skull reconstructed with metal plates. And we did just longer, low intensity sessions, and it worked marvelously. After each cycle of on-off cycles, I checked with a thermographic camera if some heat was developing, and not at all. I mean, it's super safe. I hadn't have any trouble with it.
I see.
So I will still suggest low intensities just to make sure and yeah, that.
Great.
So about expeding, I don't know if this is understood also in English, but when you release a ghost, expede or release a ghost, I had some shamanic training in that and done some of that here. And the thing that these spirits need is to, as Dan also has talked about, a coherent space so they can rise, right? So the protocol normally, as I've been taught, is like to invite the spirit. Look, you can relate to that spirit, invite him, make him aware of what is the situation and why is he trapped in here, and then invite him and guide him to go up, like to elevate and ascend, right? So that also very interesting.
And we're trying to suggest the language that what's meant by ascension here actually is that if the plasma entity can experience compression constructively, the inertia is like the ice skaters spinning faster when they pull in their arms, and that gives them the implosion necessary to then propagate into the longitudinal array, the ancestor memory, which is literally, and this is Shelley's website, theshareablewave.com. Shelley's laughing, but so to become the shareable wave, the ghost needs to get enough compression. That's why normal, successful, healthy death is literally an electrical black hole, so they're able to propagate very efficiently, and there's compression. But if someone dies, in something that's an accident, and it's very fractionating, or if someone dies in high electrosmog and other things, then the aura can't compress well. And so now you have a dizzy ghost. And the compression of Therify plasma is one example, or even a person in bliss of something that can help a ghost get centripetal enough to be released. Please. So Mauricio was also hopefully going to talk about his use of breath training with Therify and with biofeedback with Therify. Please, Mauricio.
Yeah, starting with breath, it's a great synergy because, as all may know, that it's very important to relax before the session to be able to assimilate better the energy, and also because many people tend to have like breath dysfunctionalities and things that don't let them get into a deeper meditative state. So I addressed it before the Therapy. I do some movement to release some of the muscles involved in respiration, and then a deep breath work according to the person's need, and it works very, very, very good. Both during the Therapy on can be the breath work part, and during, before and during. So that made the person more able to feel the field, right? To be able to really be present in that field and do something with it. Because another thing, very important, also stated in the latest blog, the intention. The intention it's key also because, well, about that, too, there is a little difference between the two setups you can make with the lamps in the direction of the spine or perpendicular to the spine, like to the sides. Because when you have the lamps in the direction of the spine, like in the heads and in the feet, the attention has more can move more through the body. You have a whole body experience and all of that. But I have experimented in the cases of very localized diseases that having the lamps in the perpendicular to the spine configuration helps the people to get all the attention to that point, which is very, very important. And yeah, in the group sessions also breath work before, and something very funny happening in the group sessions. I'm a yogi, by the way. I do a lot of yogi techniques, and that's my background as biophysics. So in the yogi breath work, the retention of the breath, it's the central part of it. I mean, if it's just breathing, it's not breath work like pranayama properly called. So in the group sessions, when we did the part of the retentions of the breath, the funny thing was that I explained the exercise and let everyone do their thing at their time. And at a certain point, with the Therify on, by the way, on a low setting, on a low intensity, the participants synchronized in their breath holding, which I could see because they applied the locks, the Jalandhara Bandha and the Mula Bandha. So I could see that at a certain point, everybody lowered their chin to make the bandha, and at the same time, that was very fun indeed. And also in the meditation part, when they have to move the head and also that stuff, they all synchronized. And I was like, wow.
Just naturally, just like at the Gurja school, where doing bliss gymnastics together, the women's menstruation all phase locked eventually.
Yeah, right. So yeah, the breath work definitely I recommend to all people out there. I mean, the 5-second breath, 10-second, 5 in, 5 out, works marvelously both before and during, because I personally think that it's better to not just fall asleep inside the lamps, because you know, some persons tend to fall in their habitual patterns that are maybe disruptive, as like snoring, for example. Snoring is a very serious dysfunctional of the breath. So I strongly recommend a guided meditation to stay aware or direct the attention in some part of the body, so the person doesn't just fall asleep or navigates in his mind, like I don't know how to say this in English, but it's like wander in his mind and ideas, and constantly thinking, like guiding the patient to really get into their body, which is daydreams and stuff like that. But I will get into lucid dream also, which is very, very dramatically enhanced. And yeah, the sensations of the people who get their attention in the space of the disease or the part of the body which is affected, is they experience a more tingling and release, like the making of more space in that area, which I think it's the peristaltic action of the body to get there. You know, the communication with the cells is enhanced, and the whole function of the organ or the tissue or the part of that body is potentiated. So I had a lot of patients who had fibrosis and that accumulated tension in tissues, pains, and when they guide their intention, they experience this like release, like you can almost hear sometimes like a like the fluid coming into the organ.
It's great. We've been talking about focused attention as being useful and critical here forever. And we know attention is centripetal, but to hear Mauricio have that in his own experience, beautiful to hear it in your language. Thank you, Mauricio. Perfect.
Yeah. So biofeedback, I had a lot of experimenting with how to measure. I'm still like, I talked to Dan about this last week, about how we can maybe develop some kind of protocol to like refine the how to measure biofeedback, because as it is intuitively understood, if you measure biofeedback after the Therify session without grounding, I had the experience of measuring like a little bit more stress in the Flaming Mind app, and also I Thrive. I experiment with both of them. So both grounding and the duration of the session can influence that, because in some cases you may want to have some kind of hormesis, or hormesis is controlled stress. You want to stress a little bit the body, so then it can kick in the other part of the nervous system, which equilibrates that. So biofeedback is a very useful tool to also understand how the breathing pattern is affecting the mind and the heart of the patient. So it has been a wonderful tool with me, and also in training people, because I do, for one part, I do like the biofeedback measurement to assess the situation, but in other cases where the client has come for a couple times, I initiate the training with biofeedback with the Therify on, and the person can be a little bit uh, outside the field, and I have no problem measuring the brainwave. Of course, the heart, it's different, the measurement, but with the brainwave, we have this very sensible antenna, and inside the field, I experiment a lot of noise, but like a couple meters away, it's very good.
So that's great. So you can, that's flameinmind.com with the Muse headset, that you can actually measure brain waves when you're a little bit away from the plasma field, even though there's a high voltage. So you wouldn't want to do it right in the field, but nearby you can still use the entraining effect. And the fact that you've also then used iThrive, which is the HRV, the breath, which is a simpler thing to measure. But in both cases, there's ways to measure stress. And of course, the new Flame in Mind can actually measure the infrasound of the heart and brain coupling. So there's so much potential here, and that Mauricio's actually done the homework.
Yeah. On jump into the subject of lucid dreaming, I had one crazy experience where when I had the equipment at my home before starting the practice, and I was experimenting with it, I fall asleep in the in the field, and like 40 minutes I did a super power nap. And I had a crazy expanded outer body experience. It was like nothing I've experienced before. The closest thing to a psychedelic trip I can imagine. And I won't actually recommend anyone to do this, because it was a very long time. I had the timer and on-off setting, so the lamps didn't heat and anything of that. But it's very intense. I actually woke up with a lot of thirst. And I was, oh my God, where am I? I need to come back. But a lot of clients do have had experiences of intense, vivid visions and dreams here, with shorter sessions of 10 minutes. As I explained in the blog, which Danny, is that already up or not
yet? So that's the plan here. This video, along with Mauricio's blog report, will become, hopefully tomorrow, the newest blog at therify.net. That's the plan. But go ahead.
Yeah, so what I explained there is that I experimented with 3 intensity settings of the lamps, and I can share a little bit of screen here, some pictures. The intensity, of course, that the dial is not marked in any way, but the intensity can be measured by do you see it?
Yes, we do. It's beautiful.
So this blue hue here, this is the max intensity, of course. And when this blue hue comes more to the middle or to the base, it will be a medium intensity, which almost doesn't heat at all. You can do longer sessions, and it's softer to the feeling, to the patient, and besides that, lower intensity can be made when just when you ignite the 3 electrodes here, when all 3 are lighted up, and you have at the very explicit vortex forming without touching the glass yet. So that setting can be on like a lot. I left it. The maximum time I had was I did a ceremony with a yogi teacher who came here to visit. We did a mushroom ceremony, and we left we were in the room and the Therify was on the side. It was amazing, the portal thing we were discussing, right? The capability of being such both a place of care, of filtering all the electrosmog and all the bad intentions, and getting ourselves in this state of being able to project and commune so easily. So yeah, the lower setting I use a lot also in group sessions, where we tend to go into deep meditative exercises, which are at least half an hour and 40 minutes or more. So the lower sitting doesn't hit at all. You can leave that on, and it's still palpable to the sense of the field is still palpable, and it's very useful also for elderly people who doesn't need all that much how do you say this
People who are
the
more
feeling
sensitive,
of
they're more
euphoria.
sensitive. Yes.
Yeah, and just a little bit more relaxed and longer sessions, so their body can assimilate more time this adjustment. So yeah, maybe I can also show how I align the tubes. I made this square table so they align perfectly with the lower here, which holds the case. So I put these little squares in, very, very carefully measured, so it always stays aligned, and it's more easy for me to change the setting from perpendicular to the body and in the direction of the spine also.
Remember that black box with the coil has strong magnetic low frequency conjugation known to be healing. And as he's showing, Mauricio's showing, the alignment, really fairly accurate right angles, for example, facilitates conjugation for sure. So that's beautiful work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I even put it upside down, so the coil that rests in the lower part of the box is actually more close to the body. So here's
Really
the
interesting
liquid,
work there.
it's
Because
upside down.
we believe the magnetic.
It gave me more.
Go ahead.
It gave me more cable. It gave me more cable run also, so
I see.
maybe useful. So yeah, let me check the blog, the notes, before jumping into some incredible cases.
Yeah, it's 10 after 9. So if you wanted to begin just a few case stories, that would be good.
Yeah. All right. Just a couple more things. I've been experimenting a lot with prana healing, what is the Reiki of the yogic tradition, which is incredible. I mean, the amount of energy you can channel, it's a whole new level. And the person is more receptive also because they feel naturally adjust the perception to a more calmer, open state. Also, crystals work very, very good. I put a lot of crystals in parts of the body which need some energy, like shungite, and quartz also works great. And
the shungite would be a
yeah,
super dielectric. The phase conjugate pump wave is known to be effective in quartz, and the shungite is a phase conjugate dielectric, means is conductive to capacitance, could function as a lens for the charge. So that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing was that I use a lot of sprays, like perfumes, not perfumes, like herbal, like very natural herbal, like shamanic perfumes we know it here in South America, which besides giving this whole sensorial experience of just smelling something nice and being able to relax more, also it charges a little bit or makes charge available a little bit more in the air. So when the person it's laying down, I spray a little bit of these essences, and it works great. You can really feel more charge right away.
Essential oils, beautiful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Like a rose oil, for example. We know the frequency signature even. Magical.
Yeah. So starting with the cases, I read all the blogs until now, and just to make this confirmation thing where really we can say that this helps in this. Of course, inflammations are right away very dramatically decreased, but also the pain, right? The pain. I had a lot of people with articular pains and which were caused not just from muscular lesions, but also nerve inflammation, and had amazing experiences with healing that in few sessions, very few sessions. So the big thing, of course, cancer. I had a lot of patients with cancers, and one of the cases which was more complicated was a medullary cancer, which he did some strong interventions where they drained the medullary fluids and strong chemos, and he was very like very in pain of all the articulations, general fatigue. So she was able to get to a point where they couldn't measure more the cancer cells, but they gave her a microdose of chemo for the rest of her life. So this also on top of that gave her more fatigue, less ability to concentrate and all of that. He couldn't do any exercise because she was in a lot of pain. So she came to me after leaving the microchemo before. We did that precaution as instructed. So we don't have the strong detox reaction, which I didn't experience in any patient with cancer with chemos. But I still recommend to be being very careful in the diet, some liver cleanses and very good hydrations, minerals. And so this person came, and after a couple of weeks of doing 2 weeks a session, she was able to get rid of the pain of their articulations and the hands and the feet, which gave her this sensation that, for example, when she put her feet in the grass, she felt like needles. And after a couple weeks, she was completely healed from that. She was in 340 stress index before, when she just arrived, and after that period of 2 weeks, he was in 121, and after that 1 month, he went down to 74. So that's a big change. Her HRV also changed a lot from a very flat and chaotic line to a very smooth curve. So after those couple weeks, she started yoga practice again without any difficulty. So very inspiring case.
Did you say it was a medullary cancer? I'm sorry. What type of cancer?
Yeah. Medullary. I don't know if that's English actually, but the thing which is inside the bone, which is marrow.
Bone marrow cancer. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Sorry, medulla is in Spanish.
I see. Right. And so, remember in the past, the context was that our Belgium center had reported anecdotally, but strongly, that if people were in the middle of chemo, there could be a dangerous detox reaction from the chemo in the blood. So recommended 6 to 12 months after chemo only, or wait some months, certainly anyway. And so what Mauricio is saying, that then when the chemo was way down, they were able to be helpful.
Yeah.
Amazing, helpful story.
Also, I work with an osteopath, which we combine sometimes the sessions. We do the manual adjustment in the Therify sometimes, and he reported that the adjustment of the cranial pump or the sacral or the visceral, which are the more deep adjustments or deep planes that one works in osteopathy, he said that the adjustments were more well received, like he could feel the pushing entering more gracefully in the body, and the body accepting more. So I had another cancer tumor patient who came here after targeted radio, and he managed to erase it here, so he didn't came with the tumor latent, but he developed a lot of secondary effects of that treatment, which is a lot of tension in all this area of the neck and the mouth. He couldn't open his mouth more than 2 fingers, and his voice was severely affected. He had not he didn't have saliva also. So we had 12 sessions. This was a yogi, by the way, 2 to 3 times a week, and he was completely revitalized. His stress index also was amazingly changed because he went through a lot of stress for this treatment. The pressure of developing these illnesses is also a very important factor. So he was able to enter these states of meditation that he was well aware of, or he could identify very good because he's a very advanced yogi. And I'm bringing this because this was a talk from the last talk also about the hypnagogic state. I think, in my experience, that the Therify is a very catalyzing way to enter in that state, which in yoga we know it's a very healing state, because you can rest so much and you can enter into so much deep consciousness work and healing all these unconscious things, as creating a strong intent and to carry you through your after. So yeah, he reported that, and physically he was able to release a lot of these tensions. Of course, we did a lot of combined therapy also manually, and self-releasing things like stretching your neck, some chanting also. So that was a great case also. I had a shaman who is one of my teachers in the tradition of here, the Amazonian tradition, which came here, and he gave me like all the things, all the people who came here gave me like separately. He told me like all the things together, like the energy thing in the body, how he was able to concentrate more, relax in a very, very profound and distinct way, how he was able to project and see the spiritual world, and how he was able to heal generational things he had. I mean, I was just
so that Therify helps with all of the above. It was kind of like
yeah.
And it makes sense, because if the plasma is imploding, that means plasma projective. And we have an upcoming seminar planned on ancestral healing as well.
Yeah, I had a lot of that. I have that. Oh, that's a good one. Remember, Dan, I told you I have one patient now who developed some, how do you say that, like a little various little tumors in the uterus, and yeah, uterus.
Yes.
And she had 3 and 4. She had 4, 2 in one ovarium, 1 in another one, and another one in the uterus. So she came back last week after 7 or 8 sessions, and she the 4, from the 4 she has only 1 now, which is the biggest one in one ovarium. So that last one remains, and the other one are completely gone. That is the latest good one.
Wow. When you said you were measuring stress, was that an HRV measure that you were using for stress measure?
No, stress index from the Flaming Mind.
I see. Yeah,
The hard. I think it's the hard extrapolation from the Flaming Mind.
Yeah, the low frequency of the heart with the flame in mind. Okay.
Which is I refer in the blog when you read it, HRV coherence. It's the I Thrive, when each HRV stress index is the Flaming Mind. And yeah.
Well, that's amazing that you've done all that.
So last one, very interesting. I had a broken tibia and fibula patient who had the surgery when they put you the metal, and he was able to join the bone, which is a process that takes normally takes 3 to more months. He was able to walk after 1 month and a half. He came here 3 weeks. He had 9 sessions, so we did an intensive work of 2 and some weeks, and it was completely healed after 2 months and a half. Like complete, you couldn't notice the fracture anymore.
Wow! So bone regeneration. Wow! And bone regeneration in the presence of a metal implant, still bone regeneration.
Still, yeah, with the metal, which I also measured with a thermographic camera, which of course he had a lot of inflammation also, which was more explicit in the thermographic camera, and we had a dramatically after session, the temperature of the inflammation went really down.
That's so wonderful.
As the bone.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think your reports here are so helpful, and your way of talking about them is in itself healing. We're grateful for your presence here, Mauricio. This has been fabulous. You know, we're getting close to an hour and a half here. I think we should open up the dialogue a little bit here. For example, I see a question here about the way in which you do the grounding. Do you want to just say briefly?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because at first I didn't have a grounding gear, and I did the grounding in the yard. So when it rained, I couldn't do the grounding, and that's when I measured more stress after the Therify session. And in my experience, like grounding at the end is like the how do you say the strawberry in the top of the dessert?
Yeah, that's where the charge collapse is sorted. The charge collapse is sorted when you ground. Really makes sense.
And when you feel the more tingling of the Kundalini ignition. Mm-hmm. So I would recommend like a grounding gear where the person after the session can sit again and be like 5-10 minutes breathing grounded and really integrate the experience in their consciousness, right? Because there is so much unconscious work, and one needs to assimilate that in a very delicate manner. So I use the yard when it's a beautiful day, because we're very grounding that good grass and damp feet also works great. Yeah. And when it rains,
a barefoot on natural wood or natural stone, anything like that, yes. And as you say, a damp feet in the grass, of course, is great, but or
hugging
in a river.
Hugging a tree also. We have a couple of trees here. Hugging a tree is very nice. and besides that, I would recommend a grounding gear, for people who cannot move so much. I will recommend some grounding gear, which is basically a wire onto the ground.
It's like
very
a pad,
simple.
A pad that allows you to
there are pads, bracelets. I did one on my own, that it's basically a copper bracelet onto the a grounded connection or grounding rod in the yard, and that.
There are
healing tired nodules.
Sorry, there's examples in the book as well. Yes, go ahead.
Earthing, yeah. Those you can check on the Earthing web page. They have very nice grounding pads, which they're so good because they are antimicrobial and very good, very good. Healing tired nodules. I'm into that, actually. I'm into that. my own partner has thyroid hyperactivity, and we are keeping track with blood work and biofeedback. It is very good actually, because you know the Therify induces you into an orderly timed energy. So it induces you and most important than anything in the body which keeps track of time, it's one of the most is the thyroid, right? So it has been very useful with thyroid patients, both hypo and hyper.
Wow. So that's the other question here. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. If anyone else wants to mention their questions or pop in here, this is open conversation. I see Damon Riddle had said some fun stuff here. He's been working with it.
There are a couple of questions, then maybe I can sum them up.
Sure, yes.
How can people learn about the price of the Therify device?
You know, the Therify price per se is not listed on the web. It has to do with customs and other things. And so, but basically, drop a note, info@therify.net, and we're happy to discuss and try to be as helpful as possible.
Adam asks, is there an interference pattern created in the center? What happens if one is not in center of the field? And how large is the field?
Yeah, there is clearly a sweet spot where the tubes line up and focus, and that can be, you know, a couple feet or something or more. But as the field gets more stable over time, that sweet spot gets bigger. But as Mauricio is pointing out here, there's also possible to benefit from the field even around the device for group meditation. So the sweet spot is a bit of a misnomer here. But as Mauricio also pointed out, if there is localized pain or a very localized issue, then getting the tubes in rather close is actually also very effective.
Ajda asks, would this device be able to help the negative agendas to gain momentum too? If this is a tool, would it depend who uses it?
Well, obviously, intention is the issue here. The theory, the theory is where implosion is perfect, only theshareablewave.com. I mean, the shareable wave emerges, Shelley. No, that if you did get implosion, the idea is that parasites are toasted because only a shareable wave gets through center. That's the theory. In effect, still, it's like, you know, the shaman in a circle calling their ancestors. The clear focused intention in that circle means only their ancestors that are invited appear. So a focused circle of intent is obviously still critical here.
What about taking large amount of Ormus before session?
Yeah, I'm commenting here, but Mauricio, you feel free to jump in too. But my comment would be that our experience has been that the David Hudson chemically fabricated gold powder Ormus was a bit dangerous, could burn your holes in the aura, but relatively organic sources of the Ormus, like agricultural Ormes or the Manalo, the aloe derived, can be quite useful. You know, eating a little bit of gold was a noble custom in China, for example. But there's many articles we have on that, goldenmean.info/gold powder.
I did some shungite powder tinctures, which works incredibly. Both energize it in the field, and I gave a lot of more advanced cancer patients. As you may know, shungite powder or any other Ormus is strongly antioxidant, so it makes a lot of sense. Both also because, you know, every healing instance biologically creates free radicals, and we need to contrast this. That's why it's very important also to ground, because we need those free electrons to neutralize all the free radicals created in that healing process. So it's very relevant, yeah.
Thank you, Mauricio. Well said. Well said.
Michael asks, if we use the shungite in a session, shall we use 2 stones? And what is the best way to use it?
It's interesting. Our new product that's coming out soon called Piezo Fire. We use piezo oscillators, which dramatically reduce pain. They can be very inexpensive and it's very synergetic. But then if you put a little piece of shungite in front of both piezo speakers, the effect is rather lensed and amplified. So yes, shungite, being a super dielectric, can clearly function as a lens for capacitance. There would be many applications for that in this kind of work.
Yeah, I use a shungite pyramid, and I put it in the, where the tubes meet in the middle, where the presumably the disease is when it's perpendicular to the spine. I put the shungite pyramid in the center, and it works great. And when it's in the direction of the spine, you can put it anywhere, and it's very, very channelizing the energy.
Concentrate.
So very, very recommended. Concentrate, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Dustin asks, are all the frequencies produced by Therify also produced by the Flame in Mind app? What settings need to be selected in Flame in Mind app to produce the Therify frequency cascade?
The Therify, first of all, the frequency cascade in Therify is basically the available audio range from around 30 hertz to around 10,000 or 12,000 hertz. The golden ratio perfect Planck harmonics we call that infrasound, somewhere around 12 to 18 harmonics, are present from Therify, from Flame in Mind, Flame in Sound. However, the RF high frequency and the optical very high frequency conjugation is not available from Flame in Mind, obviously. So you can get all of the infrasound that Therify is using, but none of the RF or optical from Flame in Mind. That's the short answer. Still, that infrasound from Therify and the Piezo Fire and the 5 vibes is still very useful. To add the higher frequency just makes the pine cone bigger, actually. But anyway.
Regarding the Ormus question, is that salt-derived Ormus?
Is that what? Sorry. So,
salt-derived.
There are various types of Ormus you can make from plants, from eggs, from minerals. There's a lot of that.
The classic agricultural ormes, you have deep seawater, which has a higher content of that rich trace mineral, and then a high caustic alkaline is dropped in, and then the milky precipitate, which is then dried, basically. But then many agricultural materials like aloe, for example, manaloe, are rich. And it's called Ormes emulet, but it's a big question. And these basically are like fullerenes, they're conjugators.
And monatomics.
Yes. So there are many metaphors here. Basically, everything that implodes charge, and a lot of things implode charge.
Has anyone had any positive? Sorry, Mauricio, go ahead.
I was about to answer that one. Menstrual migraine. I have, many patients who have pain when they are in their menstrual period, and I've seen how they alleviate a lot of the pain in the Therify.
Nice, great. I see Philip has his hand up here. Philip, did you want to unmute or?
Hey, Dan, can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Can you explain a little bit more about aloe? Like you're talking about aloe vera, the juice from the plant, or?
Yeah, there was a commercial product called Manitech Manaloe, which used aloe juice, and then it was treated to concentrate the Ormes emulet. And you can research that. And that was, and it's true that the thick mucilaginous component of Manitech Manaloe was high in rhodium iridium emulet, and therefore was an interesting source. This was a product for years, Manitech Manaloe, yes.
Manatech Manalo.
Manitech, Mannatech, Manitech, and Manaloe, those were names for that commercial product, but it was an aloe-derived natural Ormes emulet.
Aloe-derived natural. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Any other questions here? How are we doing, guys? It's getting a little late here. Mauricio, I must say that your presentation was heroic. I think Mauricio's emotionally stable and obviously yogic derived experience here has been a great blessing and gift to us. We can't thank you enough, Mauricio. That was fabulous in my view.
Thank you, Dan, and all the people here from the community. I'm just so happy to be part of and well, looking forward to make more community, right? With all the therapy. Perhaps we can, as I talked to Dan also last week, we could make a more forum with the practitioners and making more specifics of the results we're having and developing some more in-depth knowledge about what is this amazing thing of
That's
Therify,
wonderful.
right?
Yes, let's think about that. So let's maybe create a Telegram group and think about a forum for therapists. And part of that has been someone to moderate, and maybe you could help in that regard too, with others, and maybe Shelley, and we'll see. That's great. Wonderful.
Yeah, happy to share.
We have another hand up. Dan, iPhone 3. Any hand up? Last questions. Go ahead.
Well, sorry, Dan. Yeah, it was actually more of a comment from personal experience. As far as the monad, my journey two years ago or so, it started with a message to actually draw the monad to scale. And it was related to actual light and scintillating vision. And that experience in itself and going through the exercise of drawing it to scale, which involves the golden ratio, by the way, and P, it will in itself open up a doorway to higher experiences.
Wonderful.
That exercise alone, yeah.
I wonder if Teresa's still with us. So I don't know if you heard that, Teresa. She's our hieroglyphic monad expert. So you're saying that when you do the exercise of actually drawing it and it involves golden ratio, it kind of enacts that portal psychically. And very nice, beautiful experience. Thank you.
It led to 2 years of discovery. So, and ongoing.
Really? Wow. And now we're really understanding that drawing in itself is sort of hypercube's implosion wrapped into perfect wave shape. It says, beautiful story. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Hopefully when Teresa comes back in April to do a sharing, I hope you're with us. It'll be fun.
I was just going to say real quick, if I could, that you can make it to scale and make it really large or small, but if you know the ideas that you've talked about here, it will work so much better, kind of in the way he's saying, because one of the key things, all right, a monad the closest English translation is unit. So that unit is one, but it can be one however big or small as you want it. But what most people forget to do is to flip that from what in Cartesian terms would be from 2 dimensions to 3, and then how to move things around. So you're really practicing intense visualization, which is very, very helpful in maintaining a sacred space. But anyway, thanks for sharing that. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was directly related to an inverted pyramid, as well as the rose, which is 2 galaxies that form a rose, right, from the Hubble telescope. So
wow.
It involved geometry for sure. It was amazing, and I'll share the story at some point. Yeah.
Wonderful. Please. If you want to send any send your drawing. So wave guide to implosion or the perfect rose, all of the above. Perfect. Perfect. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Any final last thoughts? Anyone want to say anything? Are we good?
I have one special request to all the community. Let's make more global activation from Therify, Quantify, Purify, all of the above more often. Remember that I think it was the equinox, or was
we did a global Therify link up healing meditation. Yes,
that was amazing. I mean, we could see also the Schumann activity goes way up. It was.
Yeah, those requests, one of the things they imply is enough pure intention to be the leader. Is that you? That's a wonderful. So that's another task for our Therify discussion group, is to lead a global healing meditation. Well, this points to you as the heart of gold here, Mauricio.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll be glad to help to gather and hopefully make a clear intention collectively.
Maybe what we could do is, I know our FractalU appointments end sometime in April. Maybe at the last one, we plug in that global healing Therify meditation collective guided with Mauricio. That's a great thought. Thank you.
Nice, nice.
Thank you, everybody. Blessings, gratitude.
Thank you. Thank you, Tufan. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Shelly, everyone.
Thanks,
So nice to
everybody.
meet you.
Damon, thank you. Russell, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, Jenny. It's been a blessing. We had fun.
We did.
Bye, everybody. Blessings.